Hi there, my name is Alicia and I'm here to help you improve your Portuguese skills. In this video, you're going to learn the most important nouns in Portuguese. Let's begin with a short introduction. You will learn in this guide for English speakers the basic noun vocabulary in Portuguese for the following topics: persons, family, basics, time, things, clothes, city, nature, body, home, food, and colors. I know it's a lot, but don't worry. You do not need to have prior knowledge of Portuguese for this guide, but even if you do speak a little Portuguese, the information can be helpful. You can use this video to refresh your memory. And you have also a list of vocabulary, exercises with answers, MP3, and other free materials to practice. So take a look at the description below the video, and then you'll find a link to the blog, and then you find the material for download for you. Because I know it's a lot of information and you cannot just take everything in. It's impossible. So take your time, watch the video as many times as you need, and also take a look at the extra materials that will help you memorize all these new words. And all of them, they are really useful, they are relevant for your daily life. So let's begin with as pessoas, the persons in Portuguese. And you have person, a pessoa. If you want to say human being in Portuguese, you're going to say o ser humano. Then you have man, which is o homem. Woman, you say a mulher. And pay attention, because in Portuguese you have this article o, indicating that it's a masculine noun, and a, which is indicated that this is a feminine noun. In the grammar, always masculino, feminino, always, for the nouns. And then you have boy, which is o menino, and girl, which is a menina in Portuguese. A young person, you say o jovem, a jovem. Okay, so o jovem is a young male, a jovem, a young female. Adult, the same thing, o adulto, a adulta. And for an elderly person, well, o idoso, a idosa. Then you have student, which is o estudante, a estudante. And teacher or professor, that in Portuguese you say o professor, a professora. You have policeman and also policewoman. So in Portuguese, o polícia, a polícia. And the doctor, in Portuguese you say o médico, a médica. For the lawyer, you have o advogado, a advogada. And these are the words that we have just seen. And I'm not going to repeat them with you because there's no new information here. Okay, I'm focusing on the new things because I don't want this video to be too long. Now let's see a família, the family. What do we have here? Family and relationships in general, because you have friend. And in Portuguese, you're going to make a difference between a male friend and a female friend. So, o amigo, a amiga. And if it's your boyfriend, your girlfriend, then you're going to use o namorado, a namorada. Okay? The word for couple in Portuguese is o casal. So, two people that are together romantically. Husband, in Portuguese, the word is o marido, or even o esposo. You can use both. And wife, you have the word a mulher and also a esposa. The father, in Portuguese, you say o pai. Mother, a mãe. Son, o filho. And daughter, a filha. You have brother, o irmão, and sister, a irmã. So you see, important words, all right? So you should learn it if you don't know them already. And let's learn also basics, okay? Words that you're going to use every day. You have life, which is vida, a vida, death, and, well, a morte in Portuguese. You have time and weather, and both are the same word in Portuguese. So, o tempo has the meaning of time and also the meaning of weather in Portuguese. You have world, which is mundo, and country, which is o país. You have region, and in Portuguese you say a região. And you have place very generally, and you say o lugar in Portuguese. Then you have problem, in Portuguese o problema. Idea, you say a ideia. Thing, the word in Portuguese is a coisa. And for beginning, you have actually two words, o começo, o início. You can use both. You also have, for the word end, two words, o fim, o final. Both mean the same thing. You have love, which is amor, and you also have friendship, which is amizade. Happiness, you say in Portuguese, a felicidade. Money, the word is o dinheiro. You have price, which is o preço in Portuguese. Salary, you say o salário. Work, in Portuguese, you say o trabalho. To say a job, you will say o emprego. And to say free time, spare time, you're going to say o tempo livre. And if you have a hobby, you refer to it with o passatempo in Portuguese. And you also have vacation, and in Portuguese you say as férias, always in plural. You see the letter S is indicating this is a plural noun. It's just like this, as férias, because you have many days vacation, all right? Then you have trip, and you say a viagem. Party, you say a festa in Portuguese. Shopping, you say as compras. And to say gift, you say in Portuguese o presente. Sport, the word for it is o esporte. And this is Brazilian Portuguese because I come from Brazil, so this is the Portuguese that I speak. But the word esporte will be a little different in Portugal. Over there, people say o desporto, okay? But the thing is, Portuguese in Brazil and in Portugal, it's quite similar. So the words are the same for many, many things, okay? So the vocabulary is not different in Brazil and in Portugal. Don't worry, there are words that are different, but the same thing happens in English, okay? So American English or British English, but it's not complicated, okay? Then you have game. And game in Portuguese you say o jogo, okay? Then you have language, and the word in Portuguese is a língua. A língua is also the tongue. You have foreign language, and in Portuguese you say o idioma. To say word, you say in Portuguese a palavra. And the meaning is o significado. The name in Portuguese is called o nome. And emotion, you say a emoção in Portuguese. A feeling, you say o sentimento. To say fear in Portuguese, the word is o medo. And to say danger, you say o perigo. Light is called a luz in Portuguese. And you have color, which is a cor. You have number, and in Portuguese you say o número. And you have size, which is o tamanho. To say the weight in Portuguese, you say o peso. Cold in Portuguese is o frio. And heat, you say o calor. The bathroom is in Portuguese o banheiro. It can be the bathroom in your home and also a restroom in a restaurant or a public space. Then you have call, which is a chamada, and you also say a ligação. You can say both. Then you have message, which is a mensagem. And these are the words that are really important for your daily life. Okay, as long as you speak Portuguese, you need these words. Now we're going to talk about the time, o tempo. And you have the day, which is o dia. And the afternoon, which is a tarde. Evening, night, in Portuguese, we just have one word for both, which is a noite. The minute, you say in Portuguese, o minuto. And the hour, you say a hora. And to refer to the 24-hour period, you also say day, o dia. Okay, so day is, well, when there's daylight, and also the Monday, Tuesday, whatever. Okay, well, so you see, talking about Monday, Tuesday, the week, in Portuguese, you say a semana. The weekend is called o fim de semana in Portuguese. You say month, o mês, and you say year, o ano. And these are the words related to time. Now let's talk about things, coisas, things that we have with us normally. And the cell phone is called o telefone celular. In Brazil, in Portugal, they call it telemóvel. Then you have the charger, which is called o carregador. The word for watch in Portuguese is o relógio. Then you have the glasses, and in Portuguese you say os óculos. Okay, even though it's one object, you use it in plural, os óculos. The key in Portuguese you say a chave. The wallet in Portuguese is called a carteira. And a shopping bag is called a sacola. A handbag is called a bolsa. You have a suitcase, which in Portuguese is a mala, and a bill. If you're paying with cash, you say a nota de dinheiro. You have a coin, which in Portuguese is called a moeda, and you have the ticket if you are traveling in a transport. So the ticket is called a passagem. And your ID is called o documento de identidade. The check, if you're asking for the check at the restaurant, you are going to say a conta. And if you buy something, you ask for the receipt. In Portuguese, you say a nota fiscal. Okay? Well, I know it's a lot, but as I told you, take your time, look at the link below, because there you find all the material that you need to learn all these words that you see. They are really important. Let's move on to a roupa, the clothes, and the words are shirt, a camisa, t-shirt, in Portuguese, a camiseta. You have pants, which in Portuguese is as calças, even though you can use it in singular too, a calça if you prefer. You have the sweater, which is called a blusa de frio, or also a blusa de lã. The jacket, in Portuguese, a jaqueta. The skirt, in Portuguese, a saia. Dress, o vestido. And shoes, which are os sapatos. Underwear, in Portuguese, is called a roupa íntima. And now we are going to talk about the city. What can you find there na cidade? Then you have house, which is a casa, generally speaking. You can also say apartment, which will be very easy because you say o apartamento in Portuguese. Then you have the building, and you have two different words. You have o edifício, which is very generally any kind of building, and if it's an apartment building, people normally say o prédio, but they are more or less synonyms. You have monument, which in Portuguese, as you can imagine, is called o monumento. And center, also very easy, o centro in Portuguese. To say street, you say a rua. If it's an avenue, you say a avenida. In Portuguese, a square is called a praça. The traffic lights, well, you have many names for it in Brazil. It's a little strange, but it's the way it is. You can use semáforo, everybody will understand you. But depending on the region you're in, people may say o farol, o sinal, o sinaleiro. It's a very random fact. Why does the traffic lights have so many names in Brazil? But that's a fact. You don't need to learn all of them, just o semáforo. Then you have the station, which is called a estação in Portuguese. Then you have the airport, which you can imagine is o aeroporto. The port, easier, is o porto, which is why the city in Portugal is called, well, o porto, all right, the port, the harbor. And then you have church, in Portuguese, a igreja, and you also have school, which is called a escola. You have the bank, and it's called o banco. And the store is called a loja. The market is called o mercado. And the supermarket, you call it o supermercado. It's everything very logical. Then the bakery in Portuguese is called a padaria. The gas station is o posto de gasolina. The hospital, very, very, very easy, o hospital. And the pharmacy, also very easy, a farmácia in Portuguese. The park, also very easy, o parque. Then you have the bus, which is o ônibus. Okay, if you say bus, people will understand you, but we normally say o ônibus in Brazil. You can say to the subway, o metrô. And the train is called o trem. The car is called o carro. And you also have the bike, which is a bicicleta in Portuguese, and the map, which is o mapa. And after all these city words, you have another group of important words to talk about the nature, a natureza. The sun in Portuguese is called o sol. The moon, a lua. The rain is called a chuva. Snow, we don't have that in Brazil, but we call it a neve. The wind is o vento. The mountain, a montanha. The tree in Portuguese is a árvore. And the flower is called a flor. And the river in Portuguese is called o rio. And then you have the lake, which is o lago. To say the sea, you have in Portuguese the word o mar. The beach is called a praia. The sand in Portuguese, a areia. Animal, quite simple, o animal. A dog in Portuguese you call in Brazil o cachorro, and a cat is called o gato. And after all these nature words, we're going to talk about the body, o corpo. You have the health, which is a saúde in Portuguese. And illness is called a doença. The pain is called a dor in Portuguese. And medicine, it's called o medicamento or o remédio. You can use both. Head is a cabeça. And hair, o cabelo. The face has two names, a cara, o rosto. Rosto is a little fancier than cara. You have eye, which is called o olho in Portuguese, and you have nose, which is called o nariz. To say the mouth, you say in Portuguese a boca, and the tooth is o dente. The arm in Portuguese is called o braço. You have hand, which is a mão in Portuguese, and belly, which is a barriga. To say leg, you say in Portuguese a perna, and foot, o pé. And the heart in Portuguese is called o coração. And, well, another group of words to talk about your home, o lar. So you have the door, which is called in Portuguese a porta. The window is called a janela. You have table, a mesa, and chair, a cadeira. You have sofa, which is o sofá, and bed, which is a cama. The toilet is called a privada, and the sink, a pia. The shower in Brazil is called o chuveiro. The bathtub, you call it a banheira. The kitchen in Portuguese is called a cozinha, and the room is o quarto. You can also say bedroom, o dormitório. If you are at a hotel, you will say o quarto, okay? O dormitório is at home. Exclusively, but in the hotel you won't find dormitório, you will find only quarto, okay? Well, after these words, let's learn important things like eating, so a comida, the food. You have food, o alimento, okay? And drink or beverage is called in Portuguese a bebida. You have meal, in Portuguese, a refeição. You have the breakfast, which is called in Brazil, o café da manhã. And the lunch in Portuguese is called o almoço. You also have dinner, which is a janta. The salt is called o sal in Portuguese, and sugar, o açúcar. You have bread, which is called o pão. To say water, you say água in Portuguese. And meat is carne, a carne. Vegetable is called o legume. And fruit, a fruta. The first course, you call it o primeiro prato, a entrada. It's the same thing. In Portuguese, the main course is called o segundo prato, o prato principal. You have dessert, which is called a sobremesa. The plate is o prato. A cup is called in Portuguese a xícara. And the glass is called o copo. I know it's a little confusing. Cup is not copo, but well, the languages are different, right? Then you have a wine glass, which is called a taça. Then you have the fork, o garfo, the knife, a faca, and the spoon, which is a colher in Portuguese. And, well, let's learn, after all these foods, the colors. And you're going to have white, which is called branco, black, in Portuguese we call it preto. You have blue, it is called azul, and then red, which is vermelho. You have yellow, that is amarelo, and also green, which is verde. For the color orange, you have laranja, and pink is called rosa. You have brown, which is marrom, and gray, which is cinza. And the colors have the article o, okay? When you're referring to the color generally. I like white. Eu gosto de branco. O branco. Okay? And then, well, all these colors for you. And at the end of the material that, as I told you, you can download it for free. Just check the video description below. You'll find the activities that will help you understand better all this information that I know it was a lot, but maybe you want to learn some more, which is why just leave a comment below if you want to. Just tell me what you want to learn in Portuguese, and I will do my best to, well, attend your linguistic needs. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you can keep on learning Portuguese the most communicative way possible. Okay, so thank you very much and obrigada. Até logo. Hi there, I just wanted to thank you for watching this video and to ask for a favor, because if you like this content, please like it, share it, and write a comment, because when you do that, YouTube understands that this content is relevant and YouTube will show it to more people who want to learn languages. This way you help other people find me, and you also help me because I can afford to keep on creating free YouTube videos. So thank you for your support, and I wish you a lot of fun and success learning a new language.